Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, dear devotees. Please accept my humble obeisances at your lotus feet. Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya eva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Ananta koti Vaishnava vrinda ki jai. Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yutapada Kamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shrivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, dear devotees. Thank you very much for your kind association. We'll continue our study of Sri Jaiva Dharma by Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur Mahasaya, and we are studying the 13th chapter. I hope all of you are able to see the screen. This 13th chapter deals with Praman, which is called evidence, and Prameya, which is truth. This we had seen in the previous session also, but just for a quick recap, we will go through this slide again. Vrajnath asks Shri Raghunath Das Babaji Maharaj, in the first Dashamula Shlok, the Vedas are declared as the only Praman. The only evidence is the Vedas. Anything philosophically we want to say, we have to substantiate it by quoting the Vedic literature. The Vedas, the Upanishads, Vedanta Sutra, Puranas. Pratyaksha Praman, the evidence from direct perception, is not given much importance in the philosophical understanding of truth. In the spiritual path, Pratyaksha Praman, direct experience of our material senses, is not given primary importance. In this material world, what we can see, what we can taste, what we can feel is given primary importance. For example, sugar is sweet. We can directly taste it. Pratyaksha Praman. And therefore we conclude that sugar is sweet because we can taste it with our taste buds. Similarly, a perfume smells very nice, or a jasmine flower smells very nice, or a mogra flower smells very nice. We can conclude because just take a mogra flower and experience the aroma for yourself. Feel the fragrance with your nose for yourself. And then you can conclude that the mogra flower is very fragrant. This is called Pratyaksha Praman, directly with your senses, with your eyes, nose, ears, tongue, skin, etc. You figure it out yourself, experience it, and then come to a conclusion. That is called Pratyaksha Praman. In the material world, it is perhaps the most important Praman. But in the spiritual realm, this Praman, this evidence, Pratyaksha Praman, is not given any importance. So that is Vrajnath's question. Why is that so? In philosophical schools of Nyaya and Sankhya, There are a larger group of pramans, evidences which are acceptable. But in your bhakti school, you don't accept. Why is that? Even the followers of the Puranas have enumerated at least 8 pramanas. Even in the Vedic literature, in the Puranas, the Smriti Shastras, there are 8 types of evidences, pramans, that have been described. One of them, of course, is Shabda Praman, which is the Vedic literature. But there are other pramans also, like Pratyaksha Praman, direct perception with our senses, Anuman, inferring something, Upaman, understanding through analogy, Aitihya, traditional knowledge, Anupalabdhe, knowledge deduced from something that we cannot be perceived, Arthapatti, Arthapatti, derivative knowledge, and Sambhava, by the law of probability. These are various ways by which we can come to conclusions. But in Bhakti school, the other 7 pramans are not given primary importance. So Vrajnath is asking Shri Raghunath Das Babaji, why are there conflicting views on this point? Furthermore, if Pratyaksha, direct perception, and Anuman, inference, we saw example of Anuman, that an apple fell from the tree, you drop a pencil, it falls on the ground. So we conclude that the earth has a gravitational pull. We infer that from our experimentation. That's called Anuman. So if Pratyaksha, direct perception, and Anuman, inference, are not accepted as principal main sources or types of evidence, Praman, how is knowledge to be communicated and perceived? Kindly make me understand this point. See how Vrajnath is inquiring from his Gurudev. It is so wonderful. He's inquiring so respectfully. Kindly make me understand this point. Kindly help me understand this point. He's asking a question, but not in a challenging mode. This is called Pariprashnena Sevaya. This is how one approaches the spiritual master. His point is, if Pratyaksha, direct perception, and Anuman, inference through observation, is not accepted as the main praman, then how is knowledge to be perceived and how it is to be communicated? Because to communicate and perceive knowledge, you need senses. But if the experience of the senses is not given primary importance in the school of bhakti, then how spiritual knowledge is going to be communicated? Because communication requires use of senses. How spiritual knowledge can be perceived? To perceive it, we need to hear it with our ears. We need to grasp it with our mind and intelligence. So it's contradictory. They say don't accept Pratyaksha Praman, don't accept Anuman, and yet the knowledge has to be communicated and perceived and understood. How is that? Shri Raghunath Das Babaji explains Pratyaksha Praman, direct perception, and Anuman, inference, etc., are sentient pramans. Sentient pramans means they depend on the senses, entirely dependent upon sense perception. Pratyaksha Praman and Anuman Praman entirely depend on the sense perception. Everybody agrees with this? Pratyaksha Praman and Anuman directly depend on our senses, our eyes, mind, ears. However, the senses of the Jiva are imperfect because of the 4 innate shortcomings. Sri Jiva Goswami explains these 4 shortcomings in the Sandarbhas, and here Sri Raghunath Das Babaji also is explaining. All of us, our senses, all the jivas, their senses have imperfections, which are 4. 4 types of imperfections we all have in our senses. The first one is Brahma. Brahma means a tendency to be illusioned. Tendency to be illusioned. Something is not there and we think. For example, in the dark, we may step on a rope and suddenly think, oh, is it a snake? I thought it's a snake. That's called Brahm. We get illusioned. That is just the nature of our senses. Pramad. Pramad means the tendency to make mistakes because of illusion and inattention. For example, we may know everything, we may have read everything, but tell me, do all of us have a score of 100% throughout all our exams when we were in school or college or university? It many times happens that we have read a particular thing, we knew it, but in the exam, we get the wrong answer. Because of inattention, because of imperfect senses, because of pramad, because of getting illusioned. Oh, I thought that's what they were asking, isn't it? The question will say, which of the following statements is not true? And we just, because of pramad, we don't understand it properly. And we check a statement which is true. Doesn't it happen? All of us have taken tests and we don't always get 100% score because of the defect of pramad. Many times we call it silly mistake, isn't it? How many of us have made silly mistakes? That silly mistake is pramad. Tendency to make mistake because of illusion or because of inattention. This is a imperfection that we all have. Even the greatest scientist has. Even the greatest inventor has this defect. The third defect is vipralipsa. Vipralipsa means a tendency to cheat. The biggest scientist, biggest explorer, biggest inventor, we all have this tendency in us to cheat. We all have this tendency to cheat. And it may be something very small. White lies, isn't it? How many of us have told white lies like that? That's a tendency to cheat. Did you, mother will ask, did you brush your teeth? You have climbed into bed. Have you brushed your teeth? Yes, yes, mama, I brushed. Are you sure? Should I smell your mouth? Okay, okay, I'll brush. So we all have a tendency to lie. We all have a tendency to cheat. Vipralipsa. That is called vipralipsa, tendency to cheat. And then the fourth defect we all have is karna patava. Karna patava means even though we may not have a tendency to cheat, even though we may be very attentive and we may not be illusioned, and even though we mean well, but still, Karana Patava means our senses are imperfect. For example, we may have 20/20 vision, but if it is poor lighting, we cannot see. Correct? If the lighting is not good, we may not be able to see properly. I remember when I used to be a surgeon, we used to always tell the assistant to adjust the light. We are doing a laparotomy, we are doing a surgery in the belly, and we are not able to see between the loops of bowels. Hey, shine the light over there, please. Like that. Retract because the vision may be 20/20, but if there is not enough light, you cannot see. For example, the dolphins may be able to communicate at frequencies of sound that the human ear cannot perceive. A dog can hear sound frequencies that are way more than a human being. A bear, grizzly bear, can smell from miles away. So their olfactory senses are much more evolved, much more precise and acute than the human olfactory senses. So which means our sense of smell is less than that of a grizzly bear, which means there is a limitation to our sense of smell. Compared to a dolphin or a dog, there is limitation to our sense of hearing. Correct? So this is called Karana Patava. Our senses themselves are limited. Senses have limitations. What to do? So these are the four imperfections of a jiva in terms of their material senses. Brahm, we get illusioned, we take a mirage to be water in the desert. Pramad, we just are not perfect beings. We make mistakes. To err is human, it is said. Isn't it? That is called pramad. We just make mistakes. Vipralipsa, we have a tendency to cheat. There have been documented cases where big archaeologists, scientists, They have made published reports of finding a new species of dinosaurs. They have found fossils in Montana, and it's a fossil of a new species of dinosaur. And this species of dinosaur is attributed to this particular scientist because he discovered the fossils. And then later on, it is realized that those fossils were fabricated. Hare Krishna. Because that scientist wanted a research paper published very unique to his credit. So they faked data. As a physician, I know so many tests are written up and published just because the doctor wants to have something published to their name. They just do a study and then extract so much data which may really not be of any value, but they just make it look very good and publish it. This is called as tendency to cheat, tendency to lie, tendency to cheat, tendency to show something to be of a lot of value when it is not. And we all have this tendency to a small degree or a large degree. That's why we have so many passwords. That's why we have so much security system. Because people have a tendency to cheat, to lie. And then on top of that, we have Karana Patava, where our senses themselves are also imperfect. Even though we may not want to cheat, we may not be illusioned, we may be very attentive, but still, what to do? The senses are imperfect themselves, they have limitations. So, because of these four defects of a jiva, Pratyaksha and Anuman cannot be accepted as an absolute praman. It may be relevant in many cases, but to understand something that is metaphysical, something that is trans matter, it is transcendental to matter, how can the senses capture something like that? So, Pratyaksha and Anuman Praman are not useful when understanding the dimension of spirituality. Spirituality is a domain where Pratyaksha and Anuman Praman have no access. Vrajnath replies, please explain the four human failings you have just mentioned in detail. Shri Raghunatha Zabari says, the inadequate sense organs of the jiva sometimes have fallacious, illusory perceptions upon coming into contact with matter. These misconceptions are known as Brahm. For example, the eye mistakes a mirage in the desert to be water. Or there have been many cases when a person is lost at sea and they get these illusions that there is an island somewhere. They see an island and they keep swimming, 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 swimming. They cannot find it. Or another example of Brahm is when you're lost in the sea, you may see an island or you may see a lighthouse that actually exists. But because of Brahm, because of illusion, you mistake it to be way closer than it actually is. Oh, that doesn't look that far. Maybe less than a mile. And actually, it will be 2 miles, 3 miles away. Like that. These things are documented. So, this is an example of Brahm because our senses get illusioned. Further, the mundane intelligence of the jiva is limited by nature. Our intelligence is limited. Our IQ may be 150, 160, but there is a limitation, cannot go beyond that. So everyone's intelligence has a limit. Therefore, we draw mistaken, erroneous conclusions if we attempt to probe the unlimited potency of the Supreme Lord. Krishna is Sarvagya. He is all knowing. There is no limitation to Krishna's intelligence. Whereas Krishna's intelligence is unlimited, Krishna gives us our limited intelligence because we have limited capacity. Matah smritir jnanam apohanam cha. Krishna is the giver of knowledge and intelligence. Our intelligence is limited, Anu, but Krishna is Vibhu, unlimited. He is Charteshya Abhigna Swarat. Krishna is fully independent and is Abhigna. Abhigna means Sarvagnya. He knows everything. Vedaham Samatitani. Only Krishna can make this claim that I know everything. Vedaham Samatitani. But our intelligence is limited. That's the problem. Our intelligence of the jiva is limited by nature. Therefore, we draw mistaken conclusions, erroneous conclusions when we try to explore the limits of the unlimited Supreme Lord. For example, in the matter of the Lord's supreme dominion, the jiva inquires with an intelligence restricted by the mundane concepts of time and space. Our intelligence is conditioned by time and space. We have a tendency to understand everything in this world in terms of time and space. I have got this glass of water. This has a limitation of space. I cannot put this through the eye of a needle because it is got a certain size. It is some 6 inches tall, maybe 3 inches wide, like that. So I cannot put it through a keyhole. Not possible. It's too big because there is a limitation of space and there is a limitation of time. For example, someone may say, I need you in New York right now. I may take the fastest non-stop flight, but it will take me some time to go to the Atlanta airport, board the flight after clearing the security, then fly to New York, land, disembark from the plane, get my bags, and then go to my destination, New York. So even though someone may need me in 1 second, with all my technology, I cannot do it because I am limited in terms of time. You see? So all of us are limited by time and we are limited by space. But Krishna is not like that. Krishna can appear immediately. When Draupadi called Krishna in the Kuru Sabha, Krishna was in Dwarka. Draupadi was in Hastinapur, which is near New Delhi. Krishna was in Gujarat. Krishna didn't say, let me take Mathura Express and see if I can come there. Or Rajdhani Express. No. Or take a flight from Ahmedabad to New Delhi. No. Krishna was there at that moment, immediately. Rukmini Devi could not understand where Krishna went. Krishna did not even call Daruk. Krishna did not call Garud. He himself went immediately and appeared in the Kuru Sabha in an invisible form. See, Krishna didn't say, well, I need someone to open the door for me. I'm here. Knock, knock, knock. No. Krishna can enter anywhere, anytime. Krishna is not limited by space. Krishna is not limited by time because it is matter that has a limitation. This is Hare Krishna Mahamantra carved in a piece of wood. It is a certain size and it is limited by space. This mouse has a certain size. If I decide that I want to keep it in a container this big, not possible. It won't fit. There's a limitation of space. And there's a limitation of time. I had gone to a devotee's home for prasadam, and it takes 25 minutes to come from there to here. So I had to calculate that I have to leave 25, 30 minutes before so I can be here for the Jaiva Dharma reading because I am limited by time. I cannot just make a sankalp that, okay, now I want to be in my home, in my study room, in front of the laptop, and I'm here. No, I cannot do that. There is limitation of time and space. We are conditioned by limitations of time and space. But we have to understand Krishna is not like that. Krishna can be present anywhere, anytime. Time is Krishna's servant. Space is Krishna's servant. The dimensions are serving Krishna. Whereas we are controlled by time and space. For example, in the matter of Lord's supreme dominion, the jiva inquires with an intelligence restricted by mundane concepts of time and space and therefore draws mistaken conclusions. Because we are conditioned by time and space, we feel Krishna also should be limited by time and space because that is our experience in this material world. Everyone is limited by time and space. I am limited, and all the devotees listening, they are also limited by time and space. So we expect that Krishna should be also like that. We extrapolate our experience from this material world to somebody who is completely spiritual. These mistakes of inadvertence are called pramad. Whatever our conditioning is, we superimpose it on things that we study because we just assume that they also must be like that. And that is our mistake. It is pramad. We just make mistakes. And there are so many examples of that. Our, was it Edison, Thomas Edison, who invented the bulb? I'm not sure. But whoever it was, so many times there was failure. Why? Because we just make mistakes. We cannot get it in the first try all the time because our senses are imperfect. So, this trial and error, even in medicine, so many times it is trial and error. A person has diabetes, blood sugar is very high, hemoglobin A1C is more than 9. We want to start the patient on insulin. How much dose of insulin do we start? It's trial and error. Let me start with 5 units and see how it, if the blood sugar goes too low, I will cut back on the dose. If the blood sugar is still high, I will slowly go up. We do this all the time. Somebody needs to be on a blood thinner. We have to put the patient on warfarin. What dose of warfarin do I start? Well, let me start with 2 milligrams or 3 milligrams and see what happens to the INR. It's trial and error. We do it all the time. Trial and error. Why? Because we make mistakes. We are just not all knowing like God. Doubt, suspicion, reluctance to believe, and cheating constitute vipralipsa. Just white lies or sometimes cheating for financial gains, suspicion, doubt, reluctance to believe because we don't know whether they are cheating or they're telling the truth. That's all called vipralipsa. Finally, the physical senses are incompetent and imperfect, and wrong decisions are often made because of the erroneous and limited information received from them in certain circumstances. This is called Karana Patava. There was a very famous accident that happened at night where someone came with the headlights full on, full blast headlights, and they made a turn. And from here, a car was coming with low beam, and this was high beam. And that high beam made the person so suddenly blinded that they could not see. And they went on the other side and they were going through a tunnel and they hit the tunnel wall. Why? Because just blinded because of the brightness of the oncoming car, which had high beams. So why can't the eye adjust to that? Because our eyes have limitations. Our eyes are just not perfect. They get blinded by bright light. When we go from a dark room into the sudden brightness of the sunlight outside, our eyes have to adapt because the pupils are dilated in the darkness, and when you go in bright light, it's too bright, and through the dilated pupils too much light goes hits the retina, so we have to close our eyes, we have to blink, wait for the iris to constrict, and then we are kind of adapted to the new lighting environment. So these are the limitations of our senses are just not perfect, and because of this we can make mistakes. This is called karana patava. In this way, there are four types of mistakes. There is brahma, we get illusion. There is pramad, we just make mistakes. To err is human. And vipralipsa, where we have a tendency to cheat. And karana patava, our senses are faulty, our senses are not perfect, they have limitations. Therefore, Pratyaksha Praman and Anuman Praman, which depend wholly on sense perception, processing by the senses, it cannot be accepted as an absolute Praman in the spiritual realm. Materially, yes, here and there you can try. But in spiritual, where you're talking about absolute things, things that don't change, things that are permanent, things that are perfect, we cannot use imperfect senses to understand something that is perfect and unlimited. So Vrajnath replies, does this mean that Pratyaksha and other related pramans like Anuman have no relevance at all in spiritual life? So just leave your eyes out, leave your ears out, leave your tongue, nose, sense, perception, touch, everything out. Shabda, sparsha, rupa, rasa, gandha, just forget, don't listen to it at all. Is that what you mean on the path of bhakti? See, these are very intelligent questions that Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur is discussing. And as devotees, if we study them, our understanding of the science of Krishna consciousness will become very strong. And our faith in Krishna will become very strong. So Vrajnath is saying that does that mean that Pratyaksha and Anuman Praman have no place in bhakti? Srila Raghunath Das Babaji replies, is the cultivation of material knowledge Is the cultivation of experimental knowledge, scientific knowledge, available by any means other than Pratyaksha and Anuman? No. All scientific literature, all thesis, everything, it is based on sense perception, Pratyaksha, and drawing inference based on our sensual experience, Anuman. Pratyaksha means directly seeing it. Seeing is believing, as they say, or the proof of the pudding is in eating it, as they say. That is Pratyaksha Praman. And Anuman means what you are seeing, observing. Based on that, you make a theory, experiment, and come to the conclusion, inference. Inference means conclusion. That is called Anuman. Shri Raghunathas Babaji Maharaj says, in material world, in cultivation of material knowledge, Pratyaksha Praman and Anuman Praman are what? Are used all the time in the material world. Now, in understanding the spiritual world, however, Pratyaksha is useless. Has anybody seen the spiritual world? Can anybody hear the spiritual world? Can anybody smell the spiritual world? No. So, in understanding spiritual truths of the spiritual world, which is transcendental to material world, Pratyaksha Praman is useless. The Vedas are the only evidence. Haribol. Such a beautiful explanation. Such a beautiful explanation by Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. The Vedas are the only evidence. Why? Because they are spoken by a person who is from that world. Vedanta Krit Vedavicha Aham, Lord Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita. Vedas are coming from Krishna. And Krishna's abode is the spiritual world. Tadhama Parama Mama. It is Krishna's abode. So Krishna knows it. And when Krishna speaks, that's what we can accept as Praman. Nothing else. Because our eyes, our senses cannot reach the spiritual world. The Vedas are the only evidence. See that Malaysian Airlines flight which disappeared in the ocean. How much difficulty it was. How difficult it was to figure out what happened. So many theories, so many speculations, so many search operations. But we could not figure out what happened. And that's just a few years ago, maybe 10 years ago. That happened 10, 12 years ago. So, in the material world, Pratyaksha and Anuman work. But in the spiritual world, where our senses cannot reach, Pratyaksha and Anuman Praman are useless, impotent. And the Vedas are the only evidence because Vedas are spoken by that person who owns the spiritual world. The Vedas are the only evidence which is qualified for transcendental topics. If knowledge acquired through the evidences of Pratyaksha and Anuman, etc., correspond with the perfect teachings of the Vedas, then of course we are duty bound to accept such evidences. Please, dear devotees, give me your undivided attention and try to understand this sentence. Okay? Let me stop the screen share for a second so I can see all of you. Hare Krishna. So what Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur is saying is Pratyaksha Praman and Anuman Praman, depending on our sense objects, is useless for understanding spiritual matters. They will never be able to see, there will never be a high definition photo of the Nikunja Leela. No photographer, no cameraman can capture with any lens, any Nikon camera or any camera, Canon cannot, cannot reach the Nikunj, cannot take pictures of what is happening in the Nikunj. So, what about Pratyaksha and Anuman Praman then? Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Srila Raghunath Das Babaji says, as long as Pratyaksha and Anuman agrees with the Shruti Praman, with the Shabda Praman, we accept it. Because it is Sammat. It is agreeing with the Shruti Praman. But if it is not agreeing with Shruti Praman, we reject Pratyaksha and Anuman. If it is agreeing, okay. Calcutta doctor does analysis on cow dung and says cow dung is full of antiseptic. Prabhupada is quoting. Oh, this Calcutta doctor. Why, Prabhupada? Because it is Shastra Sammat. It is agreeing with the Shastra, with the revealed scripture. So we accept it. The moment it doesn't agree, we don't accept it. So we are like that. What is the main evidence for us? What the Vedas says. Therefore, it is very important. What Prabhupada says, We have to see this material world through the eyes of the revealed scriptures, Shastra Chakshu. But what our problem is, the modern man, we see Shastra through the eyes of the material world. That is our problem. It should be the other way. Our eyes are temporary, the Shastra is eternal. So, who are we going to believe? Like that. So, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur is teaching us that as long as the scientific data is agreeing with spiritual data, what we are getting from Shabda Praman, Shastra, we accept it. We'll say, good, 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 very good. You have done good research. Hari bol. Plants have life. When Indian scientists finally figured out 100 years ago. Plants also have life. We know Nalakuver Manigrif from before that plants have life. We know in Padma Puran it is mentioned there are so many plant and tree life forms, so many aquatic life forms, so many human species, correct? So we already know that plants have life. But who was that person? Jagdish Chandra Bose? Jagdish Chandra Bose? I don't know who, some Indian scientist. He figured out some 110 years ago that plants have life, and he was very much appreciated. Wow, wow. But we already know from Shakpa. Padma Puran says how many species of plants are there. Narad Muni says in Srimad Bhagavatam, Ahastani sahastanam apadani chatushpadam phalgunetra mahatam jiva jiva se jivanam. We already know plants have life. Apadani chatushpadam. That those who are four-legged animals like cow, for them the food is those beings who don't have feet, means trees. They're standing, they cannot walk. So, ahastani sahastanam apadani chatushpadam. Phalgunetra mahatam jiva jivasya jivanam. One life form is food for another life form. So we already know that plants have life. So if this scientist says that plants have life, it agrees with Shruti Praman, we say yes. Good, good research, good job. But if we say that yogurt is good for digestion, it has got nice probiotics, but scientists may not, let's say 100, 200 years ago, they may not know that yogurt has probiotics because they don't have microscopes to study. And they say, no, 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 we don't accept this. So we don't accept the scientist, but we accept the Shruti. That is the primary praman for spiritual life. So this is the point Thakur Mahasaya is making. If knowledge, oops, sorry. I want to highlight it. This sentence. If knowledge acquired through evidences of Pratyaksha and Anuman correspond with perfect teaching of the Vedas, then of course we accept such evidences. Consequently, the self-perfected Vedas, supported by the subordinate Pratyaksha evidences, are the only true evidences. The self-perfected Vedas, supported by subordinate Pratyaksha evidences, are the only true evidence. For example, Prabhupada was asked before man landed on moon that how can you say that moon is cool? Prabhupada says because Srila Narathanas Thakur says, Nitai pada kamala koti chandra sushitala. Scientists have to go to the moon, record the temperature and say, yes, yes, it is minus degrees Celsius. It is very cold. Prabhupada already knows that moon is very cold. So therefore, our primary evidence is Shabda Brahma, Shruti Smriti. Vedas are the primary evidence. If scientific knowledge agrees, we say, okay, okay. If scientific knowledge speaks otherwise, then we reject scientific knowledge, we reject Pratyaksha and Anuman Praman, and we stick with Shabda Praman. Is that clear? So we have to see the world through the eyes of scripture, Shastra Chakshu, not see the Shastra and judge the Shastra based on scientific data. Scientific data says there is no life on moon. So are we going to disbelieve Srimad Bhagavatam? That Somdev, where does he stay? Are we going to disbelieve? No, we are not going to disbelieve. Jena mane Bhagavata sei pashu sama. Tara Shasta janme janme ache prabhu yama. Srila Gaur Govind Maharaj sings this like this. Jena mane Bhagavata sei pashu sama. Tara Shasta janme janme ache prabhu yama. Yam Prabhu will punish those who don't accept Srimad Bhagavatam. So we accept Srimad Bhagavatam. We don't accept scientific knowledge if it doesn't agree with Srimad Bhagavatam. So that is the thing. For example, Shastra will say there is no evidence that Rahu or Ketu swallow the sun and the moon during Grahan. But Bhagavatam says that they have a subtle body. Rahu and Ketu, they are not real planets made up of earth, water, fire. No, they have a subtle body. Now, that subtle body, the scientists cannot see. Just like you cannot see the mind on an MRI or a CT scan. So, are we going to conclude there is no mind? Because we cannot see it. There is no laboratory test about mind. We can test blood sugar, we can test blood sodium, urea, creatinine, chloride. We cannot test mind by any blood test or any CT scan, PET scan. So, can we say that there is no mind? No. So Rahu, Ketu are planets, but they are subtle planets. Our Shastra says they have a subtle body. Scientists cannot say, so cannot see it. So they say there is no Rahu, Ketu. The scientific people, astronomers, astrologers, they say there is no Rahu, Ketu. This is all nonsense in the Vedas. But we know that it is subtle. Bichare scientists cannot see it because their senses are imperfect. All our senses are imperfect. Karana Patav. So we don't believe the scientists, we believe the Vedas. So this is the take-home message today. Our primary evidence is Srimad Bhagavatam. Srimad Bhagavatam pramanam amalam. Our praman is Srimad Bhagavatam, not some scientific literature of any scientist. So that is, we'll stop here, and Krishna willing, we will continue day after tomorrow. Jaiva Dharma. Shri Jaiva Dharma ki jai, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur Mahashay ki jai, Srila Raghunath Das Babaji Maharaj ki jai, Srila Vrajnath Prabhu ki jai. Nitai Gaur, Hari Bol. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. So we'll stop here. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Hare
Hare
Krishna.
Krishna, Prabhuji. Thank you so much. Dandavat
Thank you
Pranam,
so
Prabhuji.
much.